Well, I am American, and like most Americans, although many of them would not admit it, I was surprised when Trump became the Republican candidate, and then again when he was elected president. In a very meme-like portrayal of the American liberal elite, I did spend election night crying in a Brooklyn bar, surrounded by white women in pantsuits. Honestly, an image more suited to an episode of Girls than my actual life. But the point is that I, like so many others, assumed that the rhetoric of hate that Donald Trump was constantly spewing, that we were exposed to every day, was going to be enough to dissuade people from voting for him. The racist, misogynistic, transphobic garbage had like an actual impact on the people around me, on my own life. For part of the election, I was working in San Francisco in a nonprofit geared towards immigration, and specifically with children. And these kids who had, grown up in the States, who all of a sudden their classmates, these kids were like 12 and 13, were telling them that they wanted them to be deported and chanting "Build the Wall" at them. Or my own sister, who is a survivor of sexual assault, who fled history class in tears once her teacher suggested that women coming forward against Trump were being opportunistic. So the rhetoric did have an impact, right? And I thought it would be enough to make him not be elected. I was hopeful. And I was wrong, as it turns out. But I should be clear, I was not wrong, because the working class and young people of the United States are uneducated, racist deplorables, as some candidates would have us believe. I was wrong because both major political parties of the United States place corporate profit over the needs of the working class. Yes, Democrats too. It's true that Hillary Clinton was not an exciting candidate. And it's also true that she faced a lot of misogynistic commentary in the campaign. But I do not believe the country was simply not ready for a woman as president. The working class and young people feel disillusioned and disconnected from the Democratic Party. And Hillary Clinton, in both her politics and her demeanor, embodied that disillusionment. Unfortunately, no amount of Jay-Z and Beyonce concerts were going to save her. The narrative sold to me and my fellow young feminists on Hillary Clinton was one of ascension. Through hard work, Hillary Clinton worked her way up through a patriarchal system that was largely stacked against her, which is true enough, but to what end? Hillary Clinton historically has valued her own power over human lives. When she was on the board of Walmart from 1986 to 1992, she remained silent in board meetings as her company sought to disempower trade unions seeking to represent their store workers. Walmart later donated the maximum legal payment to her super PAC in 2013, an amount of $25,000 US, which, it should be noted, is an amount that is considerably higher than the annual wage of Walmart workers, 2/3 of whom are women. So what kind of women is she fighting for? Furthermore, as First Lady, Hillary Clinton pushed her husband to gut the welfare budget. She even went on to brag about this in her memoir titled Living History. Again, the main beneficiaries of welfare in the United States are women and children. Finally, and in my opinion most egregiously, was her tenure as Secretary of State, in which she aggressively asserted the right for US intervention in foreign countries in order to ensure corporate profit. And she's been explicit about this, that corporate profit was one of the main motives. In a 2011 policy essay, she actually states this specifically, citing, quote, opening new markets for American businesses, end quote, as a major reason for the US to intervene in foreign affairs. To this end, she called on expanded military presence in Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. And she also maintained ties with dictatorships in Tunisia, Egypt, Bahrain, and Morocco. US bombs killed women and children in every single one of these countries. Are you still with her? And make no mistake, this is the kind of candidate the Democratic Party actually values and wants. Someone who doesn't rock the boat. When Bernie Sanders, ran under the Democratic Party but is actually a democratic socialist, entered the political fray, questioning neoliberal underpinnings of things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership and calling for free university tuition and Medicaid for all, the Democrats actually conspired against him. The night before the Democratic National Convention, hackers leaked internal DNC emails, revealing that the then chair of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was actively seeking to undermine Bernie Sanders' success. She suggested doing things like spreading around articles that criticized the Bernie bros that were some part of the base of his support, though an overstated part. And also calling attention to the fact that he was raised Jewish and an atheist as a way to undercut his support with more religious voters. So, I mean, basically, when the Democratic Party was confronted with something that was going to challenge the sort of corporate skeleton of the party, they actively conspired against them. And, their sort of outcry over it being Russian hackers that may have leaked these emails doesn't take away from that fact. You did something evil, sort of, and then you expect us to be outraged about Russia over your actual actions. It should be noted that a central message of the Clinton campaign and the sort of Democratic Party in general, which was propagated by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, was that America is already great. And of course, this was a response to Donald Trump's fear-mongering and his Make America Great Again and all the sort of rhetorical baggage that went along with that. But it was also a tacit erasure of the experience of America that so many people, ordinary people in the States, have. It erased the struggle faced by young people facing lifetimes paying off student loans, people of color facing daily police aggression, and queer people fearing bodily harm for just being themselves in public. The struggle, not to say anything about the struggle of women, whose daily experiences of sexual violence are continually undervalued, as the great American democracy, as Rita illuminated, has allowed not just one, not just Kavanaugh, but 2 sexual assaulters onto the Supreme Court. This is the judicial body that, again, as Rita just pointed out, will very likely take up the issue of bodily autonomy in the form of abortion rights in the next months or years. So protecting the status quo, that was the sort of big message of the Democratic Party. And we were surprised that people weren't excited by that. And that was their response in the face of Donald Trump's fear-mongering and his, obviously gruesome stuff. There's no argument there. But it was this focus on stagnation and corporatism that dissuaded working class and young people from showing up to the polls. Not this sort of narrative of people hate women or people are inherently racist. Obviously, there are racist people that voted for Donald Trump. I will not deny that. But it wasn't the overarching narrative. This week, there are midterm elections. There's expected to be a blue wave across the country as people disillusioned with Donald Trump's rhetoric and the Republican Party and the Republicans' party inability to denounce all the terrible things that he says will likely vote in Democrats to show their disgust. We'll hopefully anyway. While obviously, based on what I have just said, I am critical of the Democratic Party, I do take this as a generally good sign. People are angry and they are looking for change, and the blue wave is indicative of that, or would be. And if the recent election of Democratic Socialists, Julia Salazar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, are indicative of anything, it's that many young people, young and working class people, aren't afraid of a leftist program and in fact want one. Voting is, of course, one way to enact change, but it's a mistake to think that it is the only way to enact change, especially within a system like the United States, where the 2 major parties are incredibly corporate, because it can actually tamper political activity. People think it will be enough to show up and vote and maybe think they don't need to do anything else. So it's important to see voting as part of the political struggle rather than the core of the political struggle. Because without the mass movements and outcries from ordinary people in the United States, like the Women's March, like these trans pride solidarity movements, like the people who showed up at JFK when the Muslim ban was first going to be put into effect, it's those things that have that have made change possible, not necessarily a vote for or against a specific candidate alone. Recent trade union movements in the United States, I think, really highlight this. This past February, teachers in West Virginia, most of them women, called a strike in response to low wages and high health care costs. 20,000 people participated in this strike, and it lasted all the way until March 7th, inspiring similar actions in Oklahoma and Colorado. This summer, Amazon workers internationally were decisive in eventually forcing the hand of the wealthiest man on the planet, Jeff Bezos, and raising the minimum wage of Amazon workers to $15 an hour. Just this past September, in response to recent Me Too activism around sexual assault, McDonald's workers, largely again working class women of color, staged lunchtime walkouts in 10 major US cities, calling for better reporting policies around sexual assault in the workplace. And then just this week, in the United States and right here in Dublin, Google workers staged walkouts in order to highlight the prevalence of sexual assault in the company and the need for structural change. It's these sorts of movements that need to continue. The mood for worker struggle is there. Again, in Britain, just in the past few months, there have been coordinated strike action for workers at TGI Fridays, McDonald's, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, and Wetherspoon. Here in Ireland, there have been recent strike actions coordinated by Lloyd's Pharmacy and Ryanair, and in the north, Boojum. At a recent Unite the Union's hospitality campaign in Belfast, the room was packed full of young workers conscious of the precarity of their roles within the service industry. And while strike actions have historically been centered around low wages and poor working conditions, there's no reason the bodily autonomy of workers shouldn't be centered in that debate. In fact, I think it must be, and I think as Amy Ferguson over here will touch on in the workshops, there are ways to put issues pertinent to women and the LGBTQ plus community at the center of future approaches to collective bargaining. And finally, it is actually these people, the working class women and the LGBTQ plus people leading these movements, who are today's real feminist icons. Because it is these women whose feminism is intersectional and rooted in class struggle, not the pantsuited candidates on Walmart boards, that will struggle for a future that fights against all forms of oppression, not just on behalf of the wealthy elite.